Mass layoffs and campus closures in Kenyan universities. What you need to know. Think universities closing campuses? It's no distant nightmare. Kenya's higher education system faces an existential crisis as budgets implode, forcing drastic measures. Let's unpack this week's financial storm, plus a peek at Nairobi's shifting property market and the Sacco crackdown you need to know about. Unlocking the future with Lua's AI power. Meet Lua, the free AI assistant transforming creativity through WhatsApp. Are testing its capabilities, from designing 2040 Nairobi visions to drafting campaigns. Participants in our Cash 5000 Reward Challenge, deadline 30 July, are already reimagining cities. Deb Muthoni's futuristic skyline submission? It's just the tip of this tech iceberg. Universities, staff cuts Loom, campuses Kaka. Treasury CS John Mbadi didn't mince words. Public universities face unsustainable funding. Radical solutions? Job cuts, campus closures, and outsourcing non-core services. But here's the curveball. The government's proposed reforms don't stop at downsizing. Mbadi's plan includes strategic asset sales to offset debt. Yet even with these moves, student capitation funds are falling short. Cash 1900 quietly replacing Cash 22,244 in education budgets. Why this matters? Satellite campuses serve rural students. Closures could derail their education access. The bigger question, what's next for staff? Mass layoffs risk turning academic institutions into hollow shells. Higher education funding model broken from the start. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu's 2024 report exposed a ticking time bomb. Students deferring studies still receive funds. This systemic failure highlights a lethal disconnect between funding systems and the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service, KUCCPS. The result? Money allocated to unenrolled students, others left dry due to administrative errors. Critical flaw. No integration between funding and placement data. This bureaucratic chaos turns scholarships into a game of chance. Banks versus government. Who wins the cash war? Moody's raises an alarm. Kenya's addiction to domestic borrowing, 2/3 of funding, could crowd out private sector loans. What's at stake? Banks might prioritize government securities over personal or business loans, leaving individuals and SMEs in the cold. With Kenya's weak tax base and informal economy, this isn't just a number. It's an economic chokehold. The Sacco cracking down, a post-Kuseko reckoning. Following the Cash $13 billion scandal, governments are drafting the Sacco Society's Amendment Bill 2025. The rules? Secondary Sacco groups must have at least 30 members, open to offering short-term loans and investing in government bonds. But should smaller Saccos be locked out? That's the core debate. Proponents argue regulation brings stability. Critics warn it excludes emerging groups. The controversy hinges on balance. Protect members without stifling innovation. Nairobi rent wars. Landlords blink first. Price pressure-free zones. Gated communities like Muthaiga, minus 2.7%, and Kilimani, minus 1.2%, see landlords freezing rent hikes or even slashing prices. Why? Tenants refuse to pay premium rates amid economic stress. But not all areas are feeling the pinch. Langata, plus 3.4%, and Bigiri buck the trend, showing that demand still exists in prime zones. Wrap up. Alongside Lua's creative potential, Kenya grapples with systemic issues. We'll keep tracking these developments. But here's a question for you. Should universities prioritize campus preservation over financial sustainability? Or is consolidation the unavoidable path forward? Let us know your take. We're all ears. MP slams government over capitation fund cuts. Insensitive to education future. Imagine a future where the next generation of leaders is underfunded and undervalued. That's the stark reality Saboti Member of Parliament Caleb Amisi is warning about, as he criticizes the government for cutting capitation funds for secondary schools. But here's where it gets controversial. Amisi argues that this reduction not only jeopardizes education, but also undermines the country's socioeconomic growth. During a recent bursary disbursement ceremony totaling King $71.7 million, Amisi posed a thought-provoking question. How can we expect to compete globally if we don't prioritize education, a powerful equalizer? He highlighted the irony of the government's ambitious economic development goals, while simultaneously slashing the very funding needed to achieve them. The competence-based curriculum, hailed as a game-changer, is struggling to make an impact. Yet the government aims for rapid growth akin to that of Korea and Japan. Amisi also expressed deep concern about the erosion of parliamentary independence, noting that the executive branch's influence over voting decisions undermines the National Assembly and Senate oversight role. The first phase of the bursary disbursement has already benefited 15,000 students, with another 9,000 set to receive support soon. Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi recently informed the National Assembly Committee on Education that the government can no longer afford the full capitation of King 22,000 per secondary school student, settling for King 16,600 instead. This situation raises critical questions. Is the government's approach to education funding sustainable? And what are the long-term implications for the country's future? These are issues worth debating. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. DCP Party's Ultimatum. Protests loom, its school funds aren't released. Kenya's education crisis is about to explode, and politicians are drawing battle lines over missing school funds. The Democratic Congress Party, DCP, has thrown down the gauntlet, threatening to mobilize nationwide student protests unless the government releases delayed school capitation funds within 7 days. At a fiery rally in Embu County that doubled as a homecoming celebration for Manyata MP Gitonga Mukunji, recently freed from terrorism charges tied to last month's Sabasaba demonstrations, DCP Secretary General Cleopas Malala issued a stark ultimatum: get these funds to schools by August 8th or we march to State House. But here's where it gets controversial. Malala claims this isn't about budget shortfalls, but systemic corruption. Why are we finding money for phantom schools that don't exist? He challenged the crowd, while real students sit in crumbling classrooms. The accusation strikes at the heart of Kenya's education system, where allocated funds often vanish before reaching classrooms. Nyandarua Senator John Mathew amplified the criticism, alleging President Ruto is being fed dangerous misinformation about education financing. Some advisors would rather build palaces than textbooks, Mathew declared, framing the funding delay as a betrayal of Kenya's historic commitment to accessible education. What's truly remarkable? This isn't just opposition rhetoric. Across party lines, from Miranga's Joe Nyutu to Kiambu's Karungo Watangwa, legislators sounded alarms about the catastrophic impact of underfunding. Kajiado North MP Onesmus Ngogoyo put it bluntly: cut education funds today, harvest unemployment and crime tomorrow. The newly freed MP Mukunji framed this as an existential fight. We're not debating spreadsheets. We're deciding whether Kenya believes in its own future. Now the million-shilling question: is this genuine advocacy for students, or political theater using children as pawns? With civil society groups joining the pressure campaign, the government faces a perfect storm. Critics argue protests could further disrupt learning, while supporters counter that desperate times demand drastic action. Do you think street demonstrations are the right way to resolve education funding gaps? Could this crisis expose deeper issues in how Kenya prioritizes its youth? The clock ticks louder with each passing day. Share your take below.